Wow, wow, wow. That was excellent, I thought. Let me get myself sorted. Good afternoon, everybody. I've got the home stretch, and I didn't know that in advance. Otherwise, I would have positioned myself a bit better. But thank you very much for staying, and hopefully, what I will tell you is going to be interesting as well. So, the case I'm going to talk about is really a series of cases, which is about what our courts, but perhaps more importantly, what corporate citizens should do when it is faced with a situation where its most basic fundamental rights are being infringed. And I'm going to talk to you about a series of cases that we refer to as the Intercape cases. It's a line of cases that's ongoing. I think we're down to 4 judgments, but definitely more to come. Maybe just a little bit of background first. So Intercape, I would say, is a proud African enterprise. It's a business that was built in South Africa by entrepreneurs, and that has grown to one of the largest long-distance bus operator in the country. It's got 155 coaches. I think it's more now, in fact, and it services 110 routes across South Africa. Rarely do you speak to anybody who hasn't either been on the Intercape bus or know people who use Intercape buses. For some of us, it's a period of our life where we used Intercape buses. But very interestingly, through my engagements with Intercape, for many people, it is an aspirational thing to use an Intercape bus to travel across South Africa. The other main player in the piece is the minibus taxi industry. And I should have placed taxi industry in quotation marks because it is a difficult thing to define. The taxi industry, of course, has a complicated history. Is very important for the South African economy, is basically what most people in South Africa use to get from A to B. But the taxi industry is also problematic in many ways. The reasons go beyond what I want to talk about today. But the taxi industry is not well regulated, is often infiltrated by criminal elements, is purely cash-based, and therefore probably pays very little or absolutely no tax. What happened in South Africa is that the taxi industry branched out from being only an industry that operated over short distances, the type of distances that we know within cities. It developed some aspirations to also travel across South Africa on longer routes, in particular from the Eastern Cape to Gauteng, from the Eastern Cape to Cape Town. If you've traveled those roads, you would have seen many taxis traveling from the Eastern Cape to Cape Town, from the Eastern Cape to Gauteng. And essentially what happened is an economic conundrum. The taxi industry and Intercape found themselves all of a sudden within the same market. And what happens with market economics is that the market will decide. Customers will go where they believe they get the best return on their investment. That is just simple reality. And what that meant for the taxi industry is that they were not going to really make inroads in relation to Intercape's market share. Why not? It's just very basic. Intercape's buses are large. They've got economies of scale. Intercape has invested massively in technology. They are extremely efficient. They travel at lower cost per kilometer, etc., etc. And what happened is unfortunately something that is happening across South Africa and across many industries, probably some of the industries that you're operating in as well. You get confronted with criminal conduct, with mafia-like conduct. In the case of Intercape, there was fairly brazen demands leveled at Intercape. The demands were basically along the following lines. if you are willing to pay an amount, 5 million rand per year, we will not interfere at all with your traveling schedule. We will not interfere at all with any of your operations. There was a different option, which was 100,000 rand per month per route. There was a further condition, which was you shouldn't depart during the daytime. Intercape buses should only leave at night so that taxis could depart on these long distance routes during the daytime. Obviously, trying to find a way into the market. Intercape was faced with a difficult decision. It either complied or it feared that the threats that were leveled against it would come true. Unfortunately, those threats were not empty. Very shortly after the first demands were made, the violence started. And the violence was serious, and I will go through some of it. I'm going to show you one video, and I'm sorry, it's a bit graphic, but there it is. On this day, it's basically one day after the demands were made. This is in Cape Town. It's a bus leaving the depot, and you will see the shooter coming up and firing 15 shots into the bus. We had consulted with Intercape the afternoon. This is at 6:15. We left at about 4 o'clock, and the airport is just behind this. And the offices of Intercape are literally in comparison to the video where I am standing now. So it was literally just outside the Intercape offices. From that day, the violence continued. We are now up to, I think, more than 175 cases. And these cases include shooting incidents, stone throwing incidents, and other instances of violence. The question really is, what does a corporate citizen do under these circumstances? This, of course, is egregious. It's an example of violence. But in many different guises, corporate citizens face the same type of choices. Either you are going to give in to certain demands, unlawful demands, in this case, from the taxi industry, but in many cases from those who are supposed to perform certain administrative functions for businesses, those who issue licenses, those who approve applications. And corporate South Africa is essentially faced on a daily basis with a choice to make. In this case, Intercape decided it will not budge. It is not going to become part of a criminal enterprise. And it approached Adams and Adams, and we, since 2022, set out a strategy from a legal perspective, which of course has to run in parallel with many other strategies, but a strategy which is based on the faith in the rule of law. We started 2 sets of legal proceedings. The first set of legal proceedings against the MEC for Transport in the Eastern Cape and the Minister for Transport, and the second set of legal proceedings against the SAPS, the DPCI, and the NPA. All these legal proceedings are aimed at only one thing. It's aimed at forcing those entities to do their jobs, to essentially do what they are constitutionally mandated and appointed to do. It hasn't been easy. 5 July 2022, we started, and those are all the dates of the different court appearances and judgments that have been handed down. Each and every one successful, each and every one coming down very strongly in Intercape's favor. And essentially, the court is also faced with a similar question. The court is faced with the question whether it will descend into the arena of forcing the state to do what it is constitutionally mandated to do. Because as you can imagine, the defense from the government side is that doing the government's job is the government's job. Doing the court's job is the court's job, and it's not for the court to interfere with how government is doing its job. It's referred to, as we all know, as separation of powers. And in this case, the court has said no. Separation of powers does not mean for 1 minute that you can hide behind the fact that you're not doing your constitutional duty in a court to say that there should not be a court order forcing you to do so. And for us, that was a remarkable victory in the process, where a court recognized that it is not open for a court to say that where the state is conducting itself unlawfully, that it will adopt a hands-off approach. The court, in fact, very beautifully in this case said that where there is unlawfulness, it is the state, the court's obligation to interfere. The court has no option. The court has to grant an order that says where the government is failing its obligation, its constitutional obligation, the court has to interfere and make the order forcing the government to do so. And in this case, it went further. The court did not only declare that government has these obligations and that they must comply with it. The court gave what we refer to as a structural order, which started to tell the government in all its guises, NPA, DPCI, Minister of Transport, MEC of Transport, SAPS, of course, not only that they have to comply with their constitutional obligations, but also started to prescribe to these institutions how they have to do so. And it built into the order an obligation to report back to the court as to how that was done. That's the phase of the litigation that we are in now. At the moment, with some hiccups, buses in the Eastern Cape in the areas where there are concerns are being escorted by police vehicles. It's not a state that can continue forever, but that is what is happening at this point in time. So we are looking carefully at how this plays out. It may be that the government fails. It may be that there is not the necessary support for Intercape's buses. And what will happen then is that Intercape would have to go back to court. Would unfortunately have to go back to court and ask the court to enforce its own orders. Where does it all end? I guess in contempt proceedings, right? That is the one remedy that you would have. Somebody goes to jail. It's absolutely not ideal. There is a more positive outcome as well. There is a reformist outcome, which says that the people in government, people obligated constitutionally, and possibly people willing and wanting to perform these obligations, pick up the cudgels and actually step up and do what they are supposed to do. That is, of course, what we are hoping for, and we will know over the next few months whether that is in fact the case. Thank you very much.